happy dentists and specialists, Grove Dental is here for the whole family. Locations in Bolingbrook, Downers Grove, Wheaton, and Lombard. Learn more at grovedental.com.
If you were like everyone else, you wouldn't be here. In this fascinating part of North Dakota called Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Because you don't follow the crowd, you follow your curiosity. Plan your visit at NorthDakotaLegendary.com.
Number one value is integrity. Always do the right thing.
We care about people. We want them to be safe, and we want them to know that when they come into the clinic that they're going to be safe doing that.
Programming on WTTW is made possible in part by an anonymous donor who is also proud to support Donors Choose.
On Extra Life, a short history of living longer.
We reveal how drugs became one of the most powerful tools we have in the fight for extra life.
A lab accident leads to
a discovery that would change medicine forever. Penicillin.
Tuesday at 8 on WTTW.
Hospitals in crisis.
A hospital that mostly serves low-income people.
What's the lay of the land out there?
Difficult. The essential hospitals that are in urban markets, they're always living hand to mouth.
In a system driven by disparity.
The structural racism of how we pay for health care.
Frontline and NPR investigate.
In the rules that we have set up, there are winners and there are losers.
This is unacceptable.
The healthcare divide.
Tuesday at 10 on WTTW.
Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, some of today's top stories. Mayor Lightfoot has tabbed the first African-American woman to lead the Chicago Fire Department. Today, she nominated Annette Nance Holt to lead the CFD. Nance Holt is a 31-year veteran of the department and served as the number 2 behind former Commissioner Richard Ford. Pending City Council approval, Nance Holt will take over a department that has been plagued with sexual harassment complaints.
She is the real deal, and I have total confidence and support of her to lead this fire department in its next chapter.
And Chicagoans might remember Nance Holt's son, Blair Holt. He was killed in 2007 when he shielded a classmate from gunfire on a school bus. And the mayor's office, along with the Chicago Police Department, has unveiled new search warrant policies. This in the wake of the much-publicized botched raid of the home of Chicago resident Anjanette Young. Some of the changes involve having high-ranking police officials supervise the execution of warrants, limiting no-knock warrants, but stopping short of a full-on ban on those, and requiring at least one sworn woman member of the department on site during a raid. And you can read more about this on our website. And state public health officials report more than 1,800 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours, with 49 additional deaths. That makes for a statewide total of 1.363 million cases and 22,369 total deaths. The test positivity rate has ticked down now to 3.1%. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Rick Pearson of the Chicago Tribune, Tom Schuba of the Chicago Sun-Times, Jessica D'Onofrio of ABC 7 News, and Lee Bay, also with the Chicago Sun-Times. So let's start this evening with the reopening, a big turning point right now with the pandemic. The state enters the bridge phase of reopening. Here's what Governor Pritzker had to say about what that means.
Many of the crowded kind of locations, right, retail or bars and restaurants and so on, this will increase for many of them to 60% for this next phase, but also weddings will increase in the number of people, much more than from 50 to 60%, other kinds of outdoor gatherings and so on, and then we'll, be moving relatively shortly, 28 days, to phase 5.
I think Pritzker is at Great America there for that announcement. We'll explain why in just a minute. But Jessica D'Onofrio, is Illinois ready for this bridge phase, given the fact that still more than half of folks are not fully vaccinated, and there are still reported cases in the thousands every day.
Well, Paris, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I think that it depends on who you talk to. So if you talk to the Illinois Restaurant Association today, they are ready. They want to operate at 100% capacity, and they just need to find the employees to be able to come back. They're thrilled that we have entered this bridge phase, and they are ready. If you talk to some people on the street about entering this bridge phase, some are not ready. Some are hesitant. They don't know whether to keep their mask on, take it off. One gentleman I spoke to today, he's still worried about going to restaurants and getting takeout instead and bringing it to his house still. So I really think it depends on who you talk to. Are we ready? Are we not ready?
And I think a lot of people are still confused about that mask mandate. The CDC revealed new guidelines. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris touted them. Jessica, what exactly is the guideline today as we speak about mask wearing if you're vaccinated?
Well, if you're vaccinated, the guideline is that you can go outside, take your mask off. If you're around other vaccinated people, you can take your mask off. We are now hearing about Walmart, and we're hearing about Trader Joe's. They are now hopping on board with, if you're fully vaccinated and you're inside the store, you can take your mask off.
Trader Joe's, kind of a surprising retailer to be one of the first ones to lift that mask mandate, because they've been very strict in there. We also had a leaked report about Lollapalooza coming back in full force at the end of July. Mayor Lightfoot said, hold your horses on that. Jessica, are we going to see these big festivals fully populated this summer?
I mean, at this point, the mayor wants to reopen the city on July 4th, and that's a full reopening. The state is on course to do that on June 11th. So in that respect, it looks like we might see that. And you hear the mayor saying, you know, expect a great summer. So I'm believing that that's where we're going with that from everything that the city is saying. And of course, the metrics still have to stay on course. Hospitalizations need to keep going down. The case positivity rate needs to keep going down, and people need to keep getting vaccinated. That is what's going to drive things to open, and a Lollapalooza to you know, manifest itself again.
And Lee Bay, speaking about a great summer, the ballparks, the baseball parks, Wrigley and Guaranteed Rate Field are now going to have sections for fully vaccinated folks where there'll be no social distancing. Are you ready to venture out into some of these big events?
You know, I really want to, but not quite. The trouble for me is, how do you know when someone's vaccinated? You know, how are they going to police this thing? And I'm not saying they should. I mean, it's kind of like an honor system, but I'm not sure everyone is going to be completely honorable. So I think I might wait it out a little bit personally.
And I actually was about to buy some concert tickets online, and the disclaimer said that everybody will have to show proof of vaccination. So does anyone know how that's going to be policed?
Well, you know, you've got to wonder, and I think Lee makes an excellent point, and that was my first thought when I saw about both these sections at Wrigley and at Guaranteed Rate. Who's going to be doing the policing? What is the enforcement mechanism here? Plus, you have the whole issue of, are you going to have that vaccination pass? Oh, no, we're not going to do any of that kind of stuff. So what really becomes the true test here of who's vaccinated and who's not? And I think this goes, you know, as we enter this bridge phase, it's really kind of an evolutionary phase that we're going through, because we're expecting more people will continue to be fully vaccinated. And at some point, even those that are reluctant, I think, will realize there's little choice if they want to resume what's normal. But I think the idea of, should you wear a mask, should you not? I mean, it's a hard thing for me to put that mask away right now.
And Jessica D'Onofrio, so perhaps that is an incentive, seeing everybody else going and enjoying all these fun events. There's also the Great America incentive. Great America will give away free tickets to its theme park for folks that show full vaccinations, or they'll have to be drawn in a lottery. Do you believe that these kinds of incentives could help get people on the fence vaccinated?
I mean, absolutely it could. And you see this happening everywhere now. I mean, you talk about the Chicago White Sox, and they're going to be offering vaccinations for free at the ballpark. And then you get a $25 gift card to use at the ballpark. Now you have Great America. The National Guard is going to be there vaccinating people, partnering with the state. For newly vaccinated people, you're going to get a ticket to go to Great America. And it's just, and also the restaurant industry, they're trying to work out a shot for a shot. Now there's some alcohol concerns there, and they're still trying to work out all those details, but you know, anything to help get people vaccinated, the incentives are just going to be out there, and we're going to see more and more of that.
There's legislation in Springfield allowing for a free beer if you show proof of getting a shot, something that's been done in New Jersey. Let's move on to some other news. Tom Schuba, let's bring you in here. There's a lot of scuttlebutt about leaked emails from the mayor's office involving the mayor and top communications and other personnel. First of all, how did this hacking occur?
Well, so it's somewhat convoluted, so I'll kind of start at this beginning here. Basically, the mayor's office and the city handed over emails from officials to this prestigious law firm. It's called Jones Day, that was kind of helping gather information related to the so-called wrong raid of Antoinette Young, who was, the social worker who was the subject of this just humiliating wrong police raid that happened in 2019. So basically, as part of that, Jones Day was transferring the files through this company that's called Excellion. That's like a firewall provider, basically. But they have a really dated file sharing service. And it was targeted by this group of hackers, ransomware hackers, who
kind of like the group of hackers that hacked into the system, the Colonial Gas Pipeline on the East Coast. But go ahead.
And similar to the group that just did the Attorney General's office. So yeah, this seems to be kind of a growing trend. And these hackers kind of indiscriminately, I think, just go in and target these things and take the files that they can, and then they kind of hold them for ransom. And if the ransom isn't paid, then they throw them up on what's called the dark web.
And so then they're discovered. And there's a treasure trove of emails here. You and your colleagues at Sun-Times went through a bunch, found some stuff out about CPD. That data shows the majority of police car chases end in some sort of a crash, and B, that there is some off-books financed a drone program. So first on that drone program, do you know any more about what CPD is using that for?
Well, so through this one email that we discovered that was actually about really the idea of using the drones for potentially chases to mitigate this chase risk. It said it's through the Counterterrorism Bureau, that it could be used for some sort of undefined terror purposes, missing persons investigations, evidence collection at crime scenes, all of which are, completely fine purposes to use it for under state law. There's obviously concerns for, privacy advocates. Under the last administration, Rahm was kind of lobbying for this state law that would have allowed police to use potentially drones equipped with facial recognition to monitor protests. That was cause for a lot of concern. The bill, wound up not being passed into law. But so yeah, I think there's a lot of questions. Unfortunately, as a reporter, when we see something like this or discover something like this, we want to ask for clarification. We want to ask for more information. The mayor's office has taken a pretty hard stance that they are not going to comment on any information that stems from any of these emails.
And to that effect, let's see what the mayor said when asked about some of these emails. Take a look.
We have no way of knowing whether or not those emails are in fact legitimate, that they have been put online in their original form, and also somebody who's committed a federal crime of stealing emails, I don't want to credit them as a credible news source. So I won't be commenting on any specifics related to that.
All right, I want to throw this question out to the panel, and I have to be honest, I don't know where I fall on this. Is there an ethical consideration here for journalists when this is public business? These emails present things that the public has a right to know about, but they were gotten through devious means like this. Does anyone sort of have a different opinion on where journalists should sort of err in a case like this?
I think it's got to be on a case-by-case basis. I mean, and obviously you have to make sure you can prove that what you have is in fact the actual emails that the city put out. I mean, when the mayor says she has no way of knowing whether these were real emails or not, well, of course she has a way of knowing. So that's just a wrong answer there.
Well, did anyone have discussions in their newsrooms just about, you know, how to use these emails and what they should do with them? Tom, what were your discussions like?
We certainly did, and I mean the stories that we've reported out, you know, everything. The big thing has kind of been like, okay, well, how can we get kind of off the record confirmations of these things and have some certainty or some, you know, assurance. But, you know, this slow trickle has continued to come out story after story. You know, yesterday Black Club had this story about, you know, Lightfoot wanted to publicize canceling her Tribune subscription over criticism of reporting. We haven't heard any pushback from the mayor's office saying, hey, no, you're reporting on an email that we think was manufactured. The group that was behind distributing these emails, Distributed Denial of Secrets, they've been behind a lot of big recent kind of data leaks like this, one of which exposed recently the donors to Kyle Rittenhouse's, you know, jail fund, bail fund, and or defense fund, excuse me, and you know, that led to the firing of officers who
and it kind of calls to mind what happened in 2016 in the election and WikiLeaks and all that. I want to move on to some national news. It's been covered vociferously in the national media. Representative Liz Cheney ousted from leadership. Lee Bay, what does that tell you about the direction of the national GOP?
You know, that it seems to me, and this is me speaking and not my paper, that the party continues to lean further and further toward Trumpism and less toward the ideals that the party have said they were founded on and the ones that they espoused probably in their better days. She got disposed, she got put out of her position for telling the truth, which I think is a chilling thing that any American citizen should consider.
And Rick Pearson, is all of this just you know, a consideration of politics, of money, of wanting the GOP to take over the House in 2022, and Kevin McCarthy thinking that this is the way to do it, have access to Trump's fundraising ability, and therefore indulge his fantasies about a stolen election?
That's exactly what it's all about. It's obvious that Kevin McCarthy believes the best way for Republicans to retake the House is to keep an association with Trump, continue followers of Trump, promote Donald Trump, promote the big lie, don't deviate from the game plan, or you have no room in what they call the Republican Party right now.
And what does that mean for someone like Adam Kinzinger, who has been as outspoken as Liz Cheney about this issue? Is there really no future for him in the party?
You know, these things ebb and flow, and obviously this era of Trumpism is going to continue at least until we see what happens in 2024 and whether Trump decides to run for president again, or if Trumpism becomes in disrepute because of court action involving things down the road here against him and others. But as far as like Adam Kinzinger, Lynn Cheney now becomes basically that face that Kinzinger had of being the outspoken person in the Republican Party of let's go back to the ideals. The question is, can they survive as these outcasts long enough for the Republican Party to try to become less of a personality cult and into a political ideological organization?
And certainly they're trying to create their own fundraising organs here. Then you've got the case of downstate Representative Rodney Davis, who said he supported Liz Cheney, but then said wasn't really part of the vote. Rick, can you take us into the nuance of his position?
Yeah, well, you've got Rodney Davis. Well, first, this comes down to one thing to look at is this is a redistricting year in Illinois. We're losing one of the 18 congressional seats. That squeeze seat is probably going to come from downstate, which has a higher area of people moving out. So you're going to, and that's Republican territory down there. So you're going to see Republican districts combined down there. Rodney Davis is from Central Illinois. The district goes from Champaign and cuts across all the way to the Metro East. He's looking at the possibility of maybe running for governor. He might find his district get drawn out from beneath him, keeping his options open. But, you know, here's his answer when, how did you vote in that closed door meeting with Liz Cheney being decided to be thrown out of House Republican leadership? And the answer was, well, I missed the meeting.
Missed the meeting, and it was a voice vote from what I understand.
And it was a voice vote, so there was no roll call to identify.
No roll call, no record. Another national story this week. Jessica D'Onofrio, do you think that former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel would make a good U.S. ambassador to Japan?
You know, I think Rahm is great at a lot of things. I have covered Rahm. I covered Rahm, his whole administration. Short answer is, I think yes.
And it's an important post there because it's a strong ally in that region. Rick Pearson, given the fact that China is a geopolitical foe, is this a done deal that Rahm Emanuel finally has his coveted spot in the Biden administration?
I think it is, and obviously, you know, he much preferred a domestic role. The talk of wanting to be Secretary of Transportation, which went to Pete Buttigieg, as well as the fact that you had any number of progressives still unhappy over his tenure and hiding the death of a teenager on video. This actually removes him out of the country. I don't think there'll be as much opposition from the progressive side of this. And to a point, his appointment by Biden, I think Japan would view as a matter of respect to the country of Japan, someone with his positions in the, not only with the Clinton administration, but also chief of staff for Obama, that I think Japan would welcome that as a show of respect to their country.
All right, let's talk about kind of a sudden and shocking death this week. The famed architect Helmut Jahn, who of course designed the Thompson Center. Lee Bay, first of all, remind us how important Helmut Jahn is to Chicago's architectural history.
You know, very important. I mean, Helmut Jahn had a 50-plus year career. You know, the United Airlines terminal at O'Hare. You mentioned the Thompson Center. State Street Village at housing at IIT. Just an incredible breadth of work that still continued. He was 81 when he died, when he was killed, and he was still very much a vital practicing architect at 81 as he was at 51, 41, and 31.
And Tom Schuba, you covered his death. I mean, it was an accident while he was out riding his bike. What exactly happened?
Yeah, it sounded like he was just, you know, taking a bike ride not too far from his suburban home, and he missed a stop sign, and cars going in opposite directions both crashed into him. So, kind of just this freak thing, and you know, Lee was helpful enough the day that I was trying to put that together. And, you know, it just, you know, shocking loss for the world of Chicago architecture.
So it doesn't seem like anyone's really at fault in this crash. Lee Bay, this happens as, of course, there's a major debate about what to do with the Thompson Center. The state has put out a request for proposals for a private developer to come in to possibly tear it all down. You wrote a column saying, please don't do that. Tell us about why you think the Thompson Center should stick around as is.
You know, two reasons, maybe two and a half. One is architecturally, it's a you know, love it or hate it, it is a unique and spectacular piece of architecture. You know, it's spectacular in terms of the visual impact of it. The public space on the inside of the building. I mean, it invites you in, as one architect told me, to protest if you choose to. It lays open government, if you will, with all the open atrium and the elevators going up and down. So that alone, the uniqueness of the building is you know, to me, it makes it worthy of preservation. Secondly, and this is just me, I'm not convinced that a developer is going to pay $200 million for that building, plus endure the tricky demolition of this building because they have to keep all the L stations in it open, and then build a building on top of that. I think that price is that the price essentially puts a brick on this development, I believe. And if that's the case, that means the state may have to think about giving the building away or writing down the price. And if it has to do that, I feel, then preserving the building ought to be an option available to developers.
And the state clearly wants to make money off of this deal. I mean, going back to Governor Bruce Rauner, he had counted on a couple hundred, maybe even $300 million to plug a budget gap from the possible sale of the Thompson Center. But Lee, how could the building be repurposed if that's the route they were going to go?
Well, you know, I don't think they're going to get the money, and if they get the money for it, I'll come back on the show and apologize. So therefore, if keeping the building then becomes an option, because they have to give it away anyway, so why not be on the side of the angels if you're the state and look to preserve this building? Helmut Jahn, as well as Adrian Smith at Adrian Smith Gordon Gill Architects, two different firms, came up with a scheme 2-3 years ago to connect a skyscraper, super tall building on the southwest corner of the site. That super tall could hold apartments, condos, you know, all offices, all kinds of things that could help that building pay the freight of itself. And of course, you know, as I mentioned, the cost of demolition, you know, anyone with deep pockets is going to have to be the person who comes to this building's or this site's rescue one way or another. But adding a tower to it, reusing the building, I think is the best way to kind of leverage the money that has to be brought to the site anyway to keep what I think is a spectacular and unique piece of art.
And
I don't want to see it go, but I will tell you.
You spent a lot of time there, Rick, covering the politicians.
Yeah, frankly, I view it like New York. It's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. But yes, it has spectaculars, all of that. The bottom line is the state can't afford it.
Well, you know what's interesting? You know, if you're the governor and you're in the governor's office, you can hear the protesters in the ground level floor. I mean, there's no place where you can't hear what's going on.
Well, that's true. And, you know, and again, you know, and Rick's point is correct. If the state doesn't want the building and it's already moving out to a new building, that's fine. But at least leave the door open for reuse as you reconsider this site.
All right, very quickly, a few seconds. Rick, there was a hearing last night about what happened at Lasalle Veterans Home, why state officials didn't step in earlier to prevent all the deaths that happened there. Did we learn anything new?
Well, basically, there was an Inspector General's report late last month that detailed a systematic breakdown in the leadership at the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, from the top all the way down to the management of that Veterans home down in LaSalle County. 36 people died, 36 residents, veterans died there. The outbreak started November 1st. It wasn't until November 12th that the Department of Public Health actually arrived on the scene to see what was going on. At this hearing, what we had were the deputy governor in charge of healthcare for the state, as well as Dr. Ezike, the director of public health, both saying we trusted that the folks at Veterans Affairs were following all the proper protocols. We were assured that everything was in place.
So it seems like
we saw
what happened. And so it seems like a lot of pointing fingers there, as tends to happen in big, horrible cases like this. We're out of time. We have to leave it there. And our thanks to Rick Pearson, Tom Schuba, Jessica D'Onofrio, and Lee Bay. And that is our show for this Friday night. Now for the Weekend Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and good night.
Closed captioning for this program is brought to you by Clifford Law Office.